Hey, I'm Angela Walters from Quilting is My Therapy, and this week I'm going to encourage you to stick with the Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. So we're about halfway through the quilting challenge. Last week we did dot-to-dot quilting with those straight-ish lines. But for all of you out there that were having trouble with it, don't worry, because now we're moving to wavy lines and serpentine lines. The great thing about wavy line quilting designs is that everybody can quilt a wavy line. If you don't think you can, just try quilting a straight line. Chances are it'll turn out wavy. They can add such great movement to areas of your quilt, and they can be quilted really quickly, which is fantastic. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to quilt wavy lines, as well as 2 different variations depending on how much texture you want to add with your quilting. Then we're going to move to serpentine lines. They might be a little tricky at first, but they're definitely worth learning because they look fantastic on your quilt. So, without any further ado, let's get to quilting those wavy lines. Do you want to know what's really fun? It is so fun when you record part of the Free Motion Challenge and then realize it was all blurry. So you requilt it a second time, only to realize that the SD card got corrupted, and now you are quilting it for the 3rd time. Well, at least I'll be really good at what we're doing. So I went ahead and quilted out a fake block to teach you how to do this design. So let's see how we quilt wavy lines. Now, a wavy line is pretty simple right off the bat, right? It's just a line that goes back and forth, a nice wavy line. I do find that working vertically is easier for me. That way I have my whole body momentum to push and pull. Of course, you might prefer working horizontally. It's completely up to you. Try both ways and see which one feels comfortable. And I'm going to go from one edge of my area to the other side, and I'm going to travel along that edge and then echo. Now, as I'm echoing, I am using the foot of my machine as a guide. I'm kind of running it along that previously quilted line. And even though I can't see behind my machine very far, I can see far enough to know where I'm going. So just kind of using that as my guide. The echo lines don't have to be a perfect echo. What I mean is you don't have to worry too much about making it the same exact shape. Instead, I would focus on keeping those lines nice and smooth. The tricky part about quilting wavy lines is remembering to reposition your hands. I have the worst habit of having my hands way out in front of me or really close to my body. You're going to have your most control when they're on either side of the needle. You can really use wavy lines to add texture to your quilting. I can quilt them so that they run into each other. And I just love how it looks. So let me show you how easy that is. And I'm going to echo the line I've just quilted. But at a random point, whenever I'm ready, I'm going to run the quilting line into that previously quilted line and then echo my way right back out. The most important thing is I want this line to look like it's merging into that previously quilted line, how it comes together. What I don't want to do is quilt a line that looks like it's going to intersect. The reason that's so important is when I echo my way back out, it doesn't leave any gaps. It makes this line look nice and smooth. I'm going to echo my way back to the other side. And at a random point, whenever I feel up to it, I'm going to run that line into the previously quilted line. And then go right back the opposite direction. The more touches you have, the more texture you'll add to your design. And of course, you don't have to do just one touch per line, you can add several. And that's going to allow you to go back and forth to quickly fill in the area. Now don't stress about this if you're newer at quilting, but what I'm trying to do is not have all my touches be in the same exact place. I want to kind of stagger where they are so that it doesn't look too repetitive. In theory, when you go to run into that previously quilted line, I want those lines to touch. Although that doesn't always seem to happen. Sometimes they're a little bit further apart, sometimes they cross over. I would rather have my line be a little bit away from the previously quilted line than to have it cross over because it'll be less noticeable. Let's talk about that merging line. We really want it to look like it's merging into that previous line. The reason this is so important is if you have a line that starts to intersect the previously quilted line, like it's going to cross right over it, when I echo my way back out, I'm going to be left with a gap. Now, if we catch that in time, we're just going to throw some more quilting in there. That's the easiest way to fix it. I think people will notice a gap in the quilting before they notice an error. You're going to hear me say that a lot, but it's very important. So as long as you fill in those little weird areas, it's going to look fine. If you're newer to quilting this design, one thing that you can do is just have more echo lines and less touches. You don't have to touch every line. You don't even have to have a lot of touches. You can just throw one in every now and again and see how that feels. Sometimes though, for some people, it's difficult changing directions. We kind of get into a path and we want to always go one direction, but there's an easy variation of this design that you can do. Instead of touching the line and changing directions, you can just quilt your wavy line so that it purposefully runs into the previously quilted line and then back away, continuing on. Now, some of you out there might be thinking, yes, I'm already doing this. Fantastic, you're way ahead of the rest of us. I just need to remember the spacing I want to have. So bring it in close, let it run into it, and then come right back out to my 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch spacing, whatever you're using. And it doesn't have to happen at any particular point. You can just do it any random moment. Just run it into that line and then swing back out in the direction that you were heading. I'll do that a couple more times and you can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. So I'm going to keep filling in my area and then we'll see what it looks like when I'm all done. So when I'm using a contrasting thread like this, it's hard to get an idea of what that overall texture would look like. But when I turn it over, you can just get an idea of the texture it's going to add because the thread color blends in. So when you're using this on your quilts, definitely try to use that matching thread color. You're going to get a beautiful result. Now that we've learned how to do those wavy lines, let's talk about serpentine lines. The thing about quilting a serpentine line is that it has a change in direction. You quilt one side just fine, and then I'm going to ask you to mirror it and flip it around. It's one of those designs that you feel like, I got it, and then you don't got it anymore. The idea is it's great to use in a lot of different areas of your quilts. So I'm not only going to show you how to quilt it, I'm going to show you some different ways to use them on your quilts. If you're having trouble getting the hang of quilting it, don't worry. I'm going to have some free quilting diagrams that you can trace along. Well, let's get to quilting the serpentine lines. So now we're going to learn the serpentine line. This is one of my favorite designs to use in narrow borders or sashings. So what I'm going to do is use my quilting to create a space that's about a couple inches wide, and we're going to learn how to quilt it. How the serpentine line works is going from one side, I'm going to quilt a line that curves up and then changes direction, almost like the side of a fern or like a gentle S curve. But basically I just want that one change in direction. I don't want anything too wavy, and one side should be taller than the other. Now if I'm quilting this in a border or a sashing, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the space right here with just a little echo, just so I don't have a gap. So I kind of travel down a little bit, echo that line I've just quilted, come back, and now I'm ready to start quilting my serpentine lines. So for my next one, I'm going to travel along the edge of my seam or that previously quilted line, and then I'm going to echo the line I've just quilted until I get to that next side. Travel up just a bit, come down, and change direction. I like to think of it as an on-ramp or an off-ramp because I really want it to merge into the side of that border when I get to that point. Now you can see my serpentine lines. I'm trying to keep that spacing somewhat consistent. And over here, you can tell I'm not stitching along every little bit of the border, but I am definitely catching it in some little places. Once you have the first line quilted, all you have to do is echo what you've already done. So echoing up, traveling a little bit, and then coming right back down. The trickiest part about this design is keeping the spacing consistent. So just practice. I'm using the foot of my machine as a guide to kind of help gauge the spacing. This particular design needs a defined edge on either side, so I need something to go in between. And here I'm just using my imaginary border or sashing. back and forth. And since this has a defined end, I have a little gap right there. I'm going to do the same thing where I come in, add my little echo line, and then get to the edge. And there I have my very first row of serpentine lines. The serpentine line is great for all areas of your quilt, but it looks so fun when you quilt them next to each other in rows of sashing. Let's pretend you had a strip quilt or a lot of sashing on your blocks. It's a really easy way to quickly fill them in. So in the first row of quilting, I've quilted my serpentine lines going this direction. But a really fun way to handle it is to reverse it so they come together and make almost what looks like whale's tails. Quilting my next serpentine line, going up. And then since I have a little bit of gap down here, I like to make sure I don't have any holes in my quilting. I'm just going to add another little line in there. Okay. And then back on track. So once I have my line, it's curving out, it's changing direction and looking like it's merging into that other side. And I can do the same thing by echoing and working my way back up that area. So if you're just learning the serpentine line, maybe it's not a good idea to try to mirror image it right off the bat, but once you learn it, it's very easy to do. I'm just having one side of the design extend higher than the other and then echoing. Now let's talk about what not to worry about. You know that's such an important thing about machine quilting. I am not worrying that my lines come together at the perfect spot. So what I mean is right here in the center, it's going to be thread heavier right there. Normally a seam would hide that, but I'm not actually worried that they're going to line up. It seems like it's happening right now, but even if they're off a little bit, it won't be noticeable. I'm focusing more on this shape right here and filling in that whole area. And then filling in any little gaps. Even if it's a weird kind of shape, it doesn't matter. As long as I don't have any holes in my quilting, I think it's going to look great. And there you can see I have the two rows next to each other. How fun would it be if I kept on going, having them alternate directions? Looks fantastic. Once you learn your serpentine line and you can quilt it in both ways, the next progression is to start using it in irregular shapes. For instance, let's pretend I had my straight line on one side and a curvy line over here. I can still do the same thing going from side to side. The only difference is one edge of my area is going to be a wavy line. So I just happen to have a wavy ruler. You could just quilt a wavy line. Doesn't matter how you get that wavy line, just as long as you have it. As you progress through the design, you're going to find it gets easier and easier to use it in different kinds of areas. If you're trying this for the first time, make it a nice and shallow wave. Don't make it so incredibly steep. You can definitely do it in that kind of space, but it's a little bit trickier. So we're going to keep the more shallow wave. So I'm going to go ahead and quilt my first line, changing direction, going to the other side. Of course, you know I want to fill in that gap. And then everything else is going to be the same. I'm going to travel along this edge. It just means that sometimes it's curvy, and then echo that line I just quilted. I need to remember that I still want to have one side higher than the other, travel up a little bit, and then come right back down. Now, as that wave on the other side gets closer, it might make the area more narrow, or as it pulls away, you're going to have a little bit of a longer line. Make it look like it's merging, travel up, and echo. Now this is when the serpentine line gets really fun. Once you can fit it in between two wavy lines, you can start using it as a filler in between your quilting designs. Again, it doesn't matter whether you quilt your wave, whether you have a ruler, that's not the main idea. The main idea is that we just want to have an irregular shape. And honestly, there's not much more to say. It's basically the same. going from side to side, merging into that line, traveling, coming back the opposite direction. As you can tell, you're going to get a little bit of thread buildup, especially if you're using it in between quilting designs. So a matching thread color will keep that from being too overwhelming. I'm going to go ahead and finish up my pretend block by adding just some teeny tiny serpentine lines within here. I'm still going to keep the spacing pretty much the same. It's not the length of the serpentine lines that determine how dense it is, it's the spacing. So still trying to aim for about 1/4 inch in between those lines. And there you can see the serpentine lines. Whether in between straight edges, straight and a wavy line, or 2 wavy lines, it really is a fast filler once you get the hang of it. Although I love quilting serpentine lines in those 2 to 3 inch borders or the more narrow areas, they can be used in a lot of different places. Okay, and some more amazing serpentine lines, but before you think that I'm the one that does all these quilting designs, I actually have a stunt quilter who handles most of the quilting for me. This is my daughter Chloe. No, I'm working on her though. You'll be a quilter soon, right?
Sure.
Sure? Okay, back to the serpentine lines. What I love about serpentine lines is they can add a look of movement to the quilt. You'll see this quilt soon in another episode of the Midnight Quilt Show, so I can only give you a sneak peek of it for now. But if you're having trouble with those serpentine lines, you still can't get it, don't forget that I have a ruler that can help you with that. Okay, it's your turn. What do you think? You feel like giving those wavy lines a try, or are you going to jump right into the serpentines? Either way, go ahead and quilt it on your quilt, and I'll see you next week when we talk about swirls and feather meanders, 2 of my all-time favorite designs. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos in the Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along, and I'll see you soon. Happy quilting!